Generic greetings and welcome to Science Insanity, a channel and podcast thing dedicated to bringing my love of science fiction in all its wondrous insanity to you, the viewer. Today along for the ride is my wonderful assistant slash recording slave, Steve, filling in the role of the science illiterate. He knows basically nothing about it and he's along for the ride and the memes, learning along with you. Say hello, Steve.
Hello.
The classic intro.
I have returned.
He is back. He's alive. I'm off my schizophrenia meds. He's back, everybody. Alright. Today's episode, we are talking about the Rifleman, one of my favorite mechs in Battletech for the pure reason that it can be most easily described as the best of the worst possible options. Are you ready, Steve?
Certainly.
So, the Rifleman. Let me get you an image before we really start, because this thing looks fantastic. Looks are genuinely one of the only things about the Rifleman that is actually good. That's the Rifleman. It looks absolutely fantastic, as I am sure you will agree. It's great. It's giant, it's stompy, it's got the giant gun arms, it looks fantastic, and literally nothing about it works properly. It's a giant disaster. The Rifleman was designed to be a definitive anti-air and fire support mech, being able to obliterate basically anything that's not on the ground, and heavily punishing anything that is. That was the intention, and it sort of worked, but also really didn't in any practical sense, because the Rifleman was designed on a firing range, basically standing still with access to a whole bunch of resupply and automatic cooling hoses, and nobody thought what would happen when they disconnected it from those two supply lines. So it has many issues. And like I mentioned, it is the definitive anti-air mech, and it's really good at that, but not because it's actually good. It's not, but because the choice between the Rifleman and no anti-air is just like starvation and British food. It's the least worst option in that case.
Least shit.
The least shit option. Designed in the late 2480s and built in 2505 by Calon Industries, the Rifleman frame is incredibly old. One of the earliest mechs actually built and still around like 600 years later. However, it had some severe problems early on. Little armor, basically no ammo, light weapons loadout, and it turned into a pressure cooker when you so much as touched the firing controls. It was a little unwieldy to use, it could also be a little unstable, it was a massive target for anyone shooting at it, and it also had the problem that it couldn't fucking turn. So this stupid mech was basically stuck being completely vulnerable to anything that got on its sides and flanks. So as I'm sure you can imagine, there were quite a few things wrong with the Rifleman when it was originally designed.
No, it sounds like it's a perfect design, man. I don't know what you're talking about. Certainly no one would think of flanking maneuvers.
Oh my god, you will not believe the solution that they came up to fixing that problem, by the way. It's pretty fantastic, but we'll get into a little bit later.
Did they add another one to each side of it?
No.
Did they just CSS Virginia this thing?
Look, it's really funny, we'll get to it, but in a little bit. So, we'll get on to that problem and how they solved it in a little bit. For now, let's talk about the main weapon systems, because that's what the entire platform was built around. So, the Rifleman was equipped with two main weapon systems and a backup. For the primary weapons, it was twin medium autocannons, which are the AC-2s or the AC-5s. Basically, they're the smaller cannons that the mechs have, not the stupidly big chonkers, and they fire very far with very, very high muzzle velocity. It also had twin heavy lasers, which are the ones that fire really far away and they glow a wonderful blue. In the actual torso, it had two medium lasers as the backup for emergencies. And I do say emergencies because firing all four of the lasers and the two autocannons would basically immediately burn all of the heat sinks out instantly and turn the mech into a pressure cooker.
Seems like a good time.
Yeah, it was pretty wonderful. The Rifleman was notorious for running extremely hot and causing many a pilot to overheat by accident when they accidentally tapped the fire control, so it was pretty difficult to use. But the weapons, at the very least, were universally effective. Because of its incredible targeting computer, the Rifleman was one of the best anti-aircraft mechs ever made. It could nail fighters and bombers from kilometers away using either its autocannons, which is pretty impressive, or lasers. However, despite this incredible performance, the lasers were a little unreliable because it would melt if it tried to use them, and the autocannons were unreliable not because they were inaccurate or didn't work, but because they had no ammo and would run out after only a few minutes of moderate firing. And when you have an anti-air platform, a few minutes of moderate firing should be constant, literally all day, every day. As for some of its more notable issues, not just design flaws, but genuine issues, the Rifleman's early versions and testbeds had a nasty habit of exploding violently when they were shot at while running hot. You see, the arm design meant that most of the ammo had to be in the torso. As you can see from the image, right, the actual Rifleman doesn't really have arms, it just have gun mounts on pivots.
Yeah.
Most of the ammo had to be stored in the torso, right? So when the earlier versions were hit, their relatively thin, paltry armor and lackluster survivability because, they were designed poorly, and the furnace-esque levels of heat meant that ammo cook-offs were very, very common and often resulted in an entire side of the mech being, removed in extreme weight loss surgery, if not outright destroying it. Part of the issue is that most of the mech's free weight went to its electronics and internal systems, so it only had 7 tons of armor, which sounds like a lot, but souped up light mechs could have like 5 tons of armor if they sacrificed a little, and the Rifleman was a heavy mech. It was notoriously poorly protected. It was also
heavy, quote-unquote.
Quote-unquote heavy. Its overall tonnage was very heavy, its armor and survivability not quite so much. It was also quite slow, clocking in at a mind-boggling 40 kilometers per hour. And for those people watching that are metrically impaired and use oily cheeseburgers per freedom football units, that's 25 miles per hour.
School zone speed limit, okay.
School zone speed.
It won't be running over no kids at that safe speed, I will tell you that much.
The Rifleman is traffic law compliant in a school zone. Alright. Oh, the worst part is that a lot of assault mechs, the really big Mondo mechs that just cannot move, they can outrun the Rifleman if they're really pushing the engine to the limits. Because this thing just can't move. It's a brick on legs. It also, like I mentioned, couldn't rotate for shit. Most mechs can torso twist a pretty hefty 60 to 80 degrees left and right, with a few of the special ones, like light and medium mechs, being able to go past 90 degrees to the side. The Rifleman can only turn 40 degrees. A lot of the different models actually less than that, because turning too far could start compromising the internal components in the heat sinks. For people who can't visualize numbers, look level, straight ahead. Now turn your head to the left or right till you can see your shoulder in the barest edge of your peripheral vision. There you go, dum-dums, that's about 40 degrees. Because it could not turn, its rear armor was incredibly thick to compensate. Except no, it wasn't, I lied. The rear armor was also extremely thin, basically paper. In some cases, you could have vehicle-mounted heavy machine guns that would rip right through the back of it if they managed it, which is just unimaginably poor protection. So you would think that anyone flanking the Rifleman would score an easy kill, and you would be right, but it has a fun quirk. It's one of the only mechs in the setting that I know of that can rotate its arms 360 degrees around, so it can just flip them back and with the rear view reverse parking camera just start blasting at people behind it while trying to run away. It is the dumbest solution to that problem ever, but somehow it's so perfect for a cursed design like this. I love it.
It's still 200 degrees around you though that you don't have an arc of fire on.
Pretty much, yeah. But look, okay, the Rifleman was told it needed to pick a direction of fire, and it took that literally, so it picked forwards and backwards.
You just gotta set it up on a corridor, and then you're good.
And then you're fine, yeah.
Anything.
Use it like an auto
side.
turret. There you go. It's perfectly fine. It was initially performing very well in those tests that I talked about, when it had easy access to supplies and a ready resupply of coolant and heat sinks whenever it started to melt its internal components. However, it was rapidly understood by everyone that bought it and used it that it was so terrible you'd literally never use it on the front lines, and the Rifleman was not. Despite being a heavy mech, despite being on the cheaper side, despite having incredibly powerful and accurate weapons, or moderately powerful weapons that were incredibly accurate, the Rifleman was a terrible combatant and was basically exclusively left in the back lines and only ever brought to the front if things were really, really desperate, or if the front line completely collapsed and the Rifleman couldn't run away in time to reposition.
So it became the front line.
So it became the front line, yeah. Instead, like I mentioned, they became very common sights in the backline, sitting on top of ammo dumps and guarding convoys, because they could rapidly resupply from them, and against airborne raiders, light mechs in, hunting supply lines in the rear echelons, and the occasional fast-medium breakthrough, the Rifleman could still take them apart quickly and viciously, because it was very accurate and heavily armed. Just laser and gun the legs off of whatever's coming at you, no problem, issue over. However, the moment it did this, it would immediately be overheated and then have to refill its ammo again. Now, that's not to say it didn't have some benefits, it did, which is why so much effort went into fixing this thing. There's, how every mech has like 10 different model numbers for it, and those are all the different versions that the Great Houses use, and maybe even some special ones that like Comstar may have.
Yeah.
The Rifleman has like 15, and most of those versions are just people trying to fix the problems with it. The way that the Great Houses and other manufacturers began to act was almost a Stockholm, I can fix him, I swear, he'll be better if I can convince him to stop fucking melting. And that is basically how they treated this thing, yeah. Some of those good points, though, were very good. Its insane fire control system, like we've mentioned, and its excellent communication and coordination systems. Now, the Garrett DJ fire control system, which, yes, that is what it's called, as we've already covered, fantastic, allowing the Rifleman to reach out and pimp slap even the fastest and smallest of targets from across a city. It's not even remotely an issue. If the Rifleman can see you, it can punch you in the teeth. But another thing that often goes forgotten is the Garrett T11 communication and control system was also amazing. It allowed the Rifleman to communicate with and coordinate with allies multiple kilometers away, even through or over hard terrain like buildings and land features. And I don't mean like radio communications, because people can basically Instagram each other from the other side of a solar system in Battletech. It's not really that special. I mean the sharing of accurate and immediate target data and information, which allowed the Rifleman to be an almost pseudo-command mech in its ability to share information with its lance or even other mech lances in the area. Now, unlike actual command mechs, which, can provide firing solutions and stuff, the Rifleman could not do this. It also couldn't improve the accuracy of other mechs using its own computer systems, and it couldn't really data link with anything. But, the comms thing is actually amazing in a fight. You see, the Rifleman can basically collate all the information of all the mechs fighting in its area of operations, and it can let its allies know where things are and what they are. If some light mech scout spots enemy light mechs or heavies or, heavens forbid, manage to run face first into assault mechs, a Rifleman could easily relay that information to all of the surrounding units and help them at least maybe not coordinate, but make decisions on where they should move, how they should react. By being able to see the battlefield and being able to interact with it in that way, it made combat way safer and way easier because it's kind of lifting the fog of war. Unfortunately, this also means that the Rifleman is extremely visible. Now remember that image I sent you, okay? If you look on the top, do you notice how it's got like that car spoiler looking thing on the top? Almost like a little wing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's the communications thing?
Yes. That's where it is. It is super, super visible.
It ever get knocked out?
It gets knocked out all the time. You see, Mech
No.
warriors are not stupid, and they won't just fire all of their weapons into the strongest armor. They will actively try to take out weapons and cripple opponents by aiming at weak spots. And the fact that this thing is so exposed and just out there in the open and providing such a huge benefit to all of the other people the Rifleman is fighting with, that makes it an immediate target. If a Rifleman is spotted on the battlefield, it's basically always the first target, because not only is it like super useful to have around, fire support and coordination, but it's also really, really fragile, so it's relatively easy to just remove off the face of the planet. You only need to hit it a couple times, and then the ammunition's probably going to do the rest of your work for you, assuming it hasn't already run out.
I mean, you gotta hit it pretty soon in order for that to happen. The classic, did he fire 6 shots or only 5?
Did he fire? I don't think it matters. It only has like 4 or 5 shots per gun. It's really not that much.
It's just a shotgun, but actually accurate.
Not even, man. Not even. The Rifleman, despite its issues, has seen combat under basically every faction in Battletech, and ironically, until like right at the current Battletech year of 3150, it's still around and hasn't been fully replaced. Probably because it can't do anything well, but hey, it can sort of do everything, I guess. Also, last thing before we move on to some of the other versions of it and start talking a little bit more about their specifics, because there's 3 versions of the Rifleman. This was 1, there's 2 and 3 coming up as well. But before we move on, one of the manufacturers is fantastic. Now, we've already talked about, like, Calon Industries or whatever, right? That's the main one. Those are the ones who invented the Rifleman. They built the frame, they absolutely mangled its engineering. But one of my favorite manufacturers are a company called Colonial Tractors. Guess what they build?
Is it tractors?
Correct. And there is a
Holy cow, look at that.
there's a story behind this one, okay? So they make exactly what they're named after, right? Fair enough, whatever. They are based in a small periphery nation. I don't remember which one. If I remember correctly, they were inconsequential, so who cares? But they had a couple main industrial worlds, and the Capellans captured one of them. The Capellans conquered the planet of Detroit. Take a wild guess what they made there.
Cars, machinery.
Cars, machinery, battle mechs, all of that. Take a wild guess what happened when the Capellans
motorized
invaded.
things.
Yeah, motorized things. Take a wild guess what happens when the Capellans invaded.
Yeah, it's in Detroit, man.
It's an entire planet of Detroit, and you're telling me you can't come up with any memes? The Capellans moved in and they found out that they immediately had the porch stolen off of all of their mobile bases. They tried to move in there and someone started burning down all of their tents. They left their mechs just out and about for 5 minutes and suddenly they were up on blocks with the legs missing. Come on, there's so many jokes you can make.
I already said, man, you can't have shit in Detroit.
Oh, yeah, so that's great. It's another one of those absolutely wonderful little things. Anyways, though, so this periphery nation only had like 3 industrial worlds, right? And it only had like 3 companies, like big ones that were actually making all of their stuff. And after Detroit got, well, Detroited by the Capellans, they were suddenly
Detroit happened.
Detroit happened. They had a severe issue, okay? Because most of their mech manufacturing was on this world. So, bam. Now, they basically went up to this random small tractor manufacturer and said, okay, you guys are making mechs now. I don't know how you're going to do it. I don't know how we're going to buy them from you. I don't know if you even know what you're doing, but figure it out and get working. We need several hundred of them in the next couple of years. So...
Seems like a Lamborghini moment.
Yeah, so, bam, I guess. There you go. The tractor-making farmer people are now making weapons of war, and alongside the Hunchback, they also made the Rifleman. In fact, they started making so many, and making just an obsessively huge number of them so quickly, that the local nation was like, guys, fuck, slow down, and had to start selling them to the great houses, mostly House Davion, to avoid scrapping them as their storage yards were overflowing and the local government couldn't handle that many. They made so much goddamn money that Colonial Tractors' profit basically started to fund the colonization of entire worlds for their parent nation, allowing them to peacefully expand further into unclaimed space. The goddamn tractor factory accomplished all of this. What a legend. So we do have technically three more versions of the Rifleman we need to talk about. So the Rifleman 2. There's not really too much information on this. There's not really any significant separate designs, so we're going to be very brief and we're going to keep going. It basically is just an up-armored assault mech version of the Rifleman. Not much has really changed. It was a Royal variant for the SLDF. It was 20 tons heavier, had a bigger engine so it could move at the same blisteringly slow speed. It had more armor, hooray, more weapons, and most importantly, not enough ammo still. Instead of the autocannons and large lasers, however, it had 2 LBX-10s and large pulse lasers, so it was built for brawling. And the LBX-10s are the same size as like an autocannon 10, but it's a shotgun, not an actual cannon. So, you know...
Oh, so the actual shotgun thing I said earlier does come into play.
Yeah, pretty much. For context, basically imagine, take like an Abrams, okay? And it's like a fully auto 120mm shotgun and then push that directly into the face of some infantrymen. Fine red mist seems about the correct description for what this weapon would do to people.
Yeah, something like that. Something along those lines.
Yeah. It was basically just an upscaled variant of the Rifleman that was way heavier, and it also came with a customary wheelbarrow to carry the pilot's solid steel nuts, because it still had all the same deficiencies of the Rifleman that we talked about, but this thing was built for brawling, so you are directly in the face of an enemy. Good job, design team! Moving on from the Rifleman 2, we have the confusingly named Rifleman 2C, the clan variant. And I actually have to get a picture of this, because it's really, really dumb. Oh, no, it's a PNG. Ew. Oh, this is a PNG too. Ew. Oh, they're all PNGs. Why? You know what? It's fine. Everything is a PNG. It's fine. Here you go. So, this is the Rifleman 2C. As you'll notice, many things are the same. There have been some minor redesigns to the actual gun arms, the legs, and the torsos, just like small structural changes to make it a little bit more fluid and a little bit less clunky looking. But you will notice...
Now it has a saucer on its head.
Yeah, it's wearing a dinner plate on its head. Hooray! That is the new sensor section. They took that already really exposed and really dumb looking like fin on the top of the Rifleman and said, no, make it a circle. And then just rolled with it. And they put a stupid, like you see just above the cockpit, there's that little like red circle there. That is a stupid rinky-dink little small laser. This thing is still designed to shoot people from the other side of the continent, but they put a stupid little small laser in there. Why? No one knows. The wiki literally describes it as probably being an afterthought or an accident that nobody ever bothered to fix.
I could see that be a description of so many other things for that though, but like, why did they choose a laser? Like, just
I don't
make it a
know.
targeting system? Like, make something else up?
Maybe there was supposed to be like a tag in there or something, which is like a laser designator. Maybe, I don't know, but they just put a random small laser. That's a head slot as well. The pilot is sitting directly below that laser, which means, by the way, lasers generate a lot of heat, which means every time he fires that thing, if he fires it, he's probably giving himself second-degree burns, like every time. Why?
Right.
It's such a weird thing. Anyways, it's a clan variant, obviously, so it has better weapons, heavier weight limit, more armor. It's somehow slower than the regular Rifleman is, but it's got bigger weapons and it has jump jets, so the jump jets basically completely invalidate all of the mobility issues. This thing can move very fast if it's using the jump jets. So, of course, it's equipped with fancy clan probes, sensors, and targeting computers up there in the stupid dinner plate that it's got in its head, and it was notably more accurate and deadly than the Inner Sphere Rifleman. However, even though it was slightly slower, and I wrote here, it stayed fast in quotation marks, because its frame was made of endosteel, which is basically a really light alloy that takes up a little bit more space for more weight savings, making it much lighter and freeing up more tonnage for a bigger engine, to still move slower than the already slow Rifleman. Since it's a clan mech,
school zone compliant.
Yeah, it's school zone compliant. The clans care about being school zone compliant. Since it is a clan mech, of course, it has a ton of stupid weapons, all right? And since the clan mechs are like omni mechs, they can swap those things out without much of an issue. It's not like the Inner Sphere where what you build it with is what it's got. It has machine gun Gauss rifles. They're called hyper assault Gauss cannons. It's got plasma cannons. It's got turbo missile launchers. It has super heavy lasers aplenty, you name it. It's got all of these fancy, ridiculous, over-the-top, even longer range weapons than the Rifleman already has. The clan version was basically just even more hyper-focused on long-range engagements with super pinpoint high damage and accurate weapons. They did kind of solve the ammo problem though, because most of the Rifleman 2Cs have a decent amount of ammo, but mostly that's because they prefer to use energy weapons over any of the kinetic weapons. Like the one I showed you, that's just straight up pure energy. That sucker has nothing that it even needs to use ammo for. So I don't know if removing the guns solves the ammo problem, but sure, clans, you do you.
It might solve a problem, who knows?
Maybe, perhaps. Moving on to my favorite version of the Rifleman. I gotta get a picture of this. He's a fat boy, okay? He is a very, very fat boy. And I gotta find a good picture of him for you. Oh, no, here we go. Found it. Oh my god, this thing is great. I love it. There's actually some really good art that I'm gonna rip straight off of Tex Talks Battletech. I'm sorry, buddy, but you commission amazing art. There you go. You see that orange guy, that yellow and black hazard dude in the back? That's the Rifleman 3. Let me get another image for you because it gets better. I swear to God, it gets better. Here is a close-up of this sucker, pure and simple. Guess what those guns are?
Are those lasers?
No.
Is that... is that a 203 centimeter cannon?
No, you're closer. It is a kinetic weapon. Guess again. Third strike and you're out.
Oh, God. Those big... No.
Come on, you can do this. What sci-fi weapon does it look like? Every single sci-fi designer ever makes this weapon look exactly like that. Come on, you can do it.
Bro, I'm here because I don't know sci-fi. What?
Come on, you can do it. You've seen it before. It's either this. It's either yes. It's either this or it's two twin rails. Come on, you have every single future cannon design ever.
The railgun.
Yes, it's the Gauss rifle. It's the railgun.
Oh my god.
There's 4 of them in this one mech. Which is insane, by the way, because those things are so huge. They take up all the space available in an entire, like, component of a mech. You've got, like, the side torso and the arms. You can put, like, 1,000,000 small lasers in there. You can put a few big guns. You put a Gauss rifle, takes up the entire thing. There's no room for anything else. This mech literally only has a tiny amount of space for ammo in the torso and the legs. But, you know, like, who puts ammunition in the legs of a mech? So, this thing is an absolute meme machine. I love it. So, do you know what an urban mech is?
I would assume it's supposed to be a city mech.
You know what? Let me get you an image of the almighty trash can. I love how fucking stupid this thing is.
What the fuck is that?
It's the trash can of doom. That's an urban mech. It only moves like 19 kilometers an hour. It's like something like 9.
School zone compliant.
Yeah, like 9 or 10 miles per hour. That's it. That's how fast an urban mech moves. And this thing is slower than that. It can't move. It's so heavy. Only one was ever built, and it was a prototype. That's the only one. It was used in combat, and it did pretty impressive considering its downsides. But we gotta go over what an absolute monstrosity this thing is.
It would just be able to sit there and kill everything in front of it, though. I mean...
Yeah, so it's...
Of course it would be somewhat impressive.
Oh, it's got more gimmicks than that, believe me. So it's really slow. We've been over that. They gave it a tiny engine to save weight and save space, okay? It can barely move, but they designed it to be an ambush mech. Like, freaking how? I have no idea.
Hey, you put it in a bush and you wait for them to come to you. That's how you ambush that.
If nobody comes to your section of the front line, you're just sitting there like, well, I guess the war goes on without me.
Yeah.
Oh my god. It's so dumb. It's so dumb, but it gets better because they also gave it something called a null signature system, which is basically the Battletech version of stealth armor. It was a black armor coating that rendered the mech almost invisible to sensors and also hid them from stuff like, for example, thermal signatures, any form of like visual identification that the computer could use. And it also meant that overheating was even more of a problem because when you're using the NSS, you cannot bleed any heat out, which means your heat sinks do not work and your engine starts slowly building up heat internally until you either turn it off or you explode. Still though, somehow, when the SLDF was invading Earth to basically depose of Stefan Amaris, the guy who had committed a coup against the Star League and tried to take it over, this thing did manage to kill 9 SLDF mechs before finally being brought down. After it ran out of ammo and it was caught and shot in the back while it was trying and failing to escape from the battlefield.
I mean, 9 for 16 is not bad. I mean,
that's a pretty good kill ratio. However, its demise doesn't end there because it was basically forgotten. You see, the design was so secret and so, like, totally hidden that once Stefan Amaris was dead, it was basically gone. And this actual production model, the singular one that was out there, got buried under a building or something that caved on top of it and crushed it into the ground. It was then, when Terra was rebuilt, paved over, and I assume like a Pizza Hut was built on top of it, so it was legitimately forgotten for like 600 years, just chilling in a greasy tomb until eventually it was accidentally dug up during construction that ended up finding these ruins, and then some, archaeologists were brought in to start digging. Why does it exist? It's garbage. It sucks. It looks really cool. It exists
to be a foundation for a Pizza Hut, man. Leave it alone. Stop bullying it.
All of its sloped armor, you look at it and you're like, I know a Pizza Hut when I see one. And that's pretty much the end of it. Anything else you want to ask? Any questions or statements before we end the video? Because
no.
No?
No.
Yeah, anyways, that's pretty much everything to do with the Rifleman 1, 2, and 3. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you did, subscribe to the channel. Go check out some of our other content. We talk about many things, from lore to individual vehicles to characters to other science fiction universes besides Battletech. Check it all out. I am no longer asking, it's a command. You will donate the rest of your afternoon to watching nothing but science insanity. Goodbye, see you next week for the King Crab!